I kept checking the clock and telling myself, she'll be home any minute. The house was quiet, too quiet. I called her phone and said, "Hey, just checking where you are." It went to voicemail. I laughed at myself and whispered, "Relax, you're overthinking." At 11, I texted, "Everything okay?" No reply. I stared at the door and said out loud, "We've been married 6 years. She wouldn't just disappear." I believed that. I had to believe it. By midnight, my hands were shaking. I called again, "Please pick up." I muttered, "Nothing." I sat on the couch and said, "This isn't like you." I remembered how we used to talk all night, how she once told me, "You're the safest place I know." I held onto that memory like a lifeline. At 1 a.m., I tried to sound calm in another message, "Let me know when you're heading home." I added a smiley face, like that could hide my fear. I told myself, "She's just with friends, don't be dramatic." But a voice in my head kept whispering her ex's name. I shut it down fast. "That's in the past," I said firmly. She had told me, "I'm done with him, you're my present." I trusted her. I trusted us. At 2, I paced the room and talked to myself. Maybe her phone died. I poured a drink and said, "Stop imagining things." The walls felt like they were closing in. Every sound made my heart jump. At 3, I sent one last text. "I'm worried. Please call me." My chest hurt. I thought about our wedding night, when she said, "No matter what, I'll always come home to you." Those words echoed now, hollow and cruel. When 4 a.m. came, I stopped calling. I sat in the dark, phone in my hand, and said quietly, "If you walk through that door, everything will be fine." Even as I said it, something inside me cracked. I stared at my screen, willing it to light up. It didn't. The silence answered me instead, and for the first time, I felt like I was already alone. I whispered, "Come on, just one message," like I was praying. I argued with myself, saying, "You trust her, remember." Then another voice answered, "Trust doesn't mean blind." I picked up our framed photo and said, "Look at us. We were happy." I put it down and felt stupid. I checked social media and told myself, "Don't do this." I did it anyway. Nothing new. I sighed and said, "I hate this feeling." The clock ticked louder, and with every second, my hope grew thinner. I stayed awake, waiting, knowing down something terrible had begun. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing and said, "Finally." My heart jumped as I grabbed it. I read her message once, then again, then again. I stayed with him. I needed closure. I whispered, "What?" My hands started shaking. I sat up and said, "This is a joke, right?" But the words didn't change. I typed, "You stayed where?" My chest felt tight. She replied, "At his place." I laughed, sharp and broken, and said, "Your ex." My phone buzzed again. "Yes, please don't make this worse." I stared at that line and said, "You already did." I called her immediately. When she answered, I said, "Tell me you're lying." She sighed and said, "I didn't plan it." I snapped, "You don't plan to betray someone." She said, "I needed to talk to him." I asked, "All night?" She stayed silent. That silence said everything. I stood up and paced, saying, "You promised me." She said, "I was confused." I yelled, "Confused doesn't mean sleeping with your past." My voice cracked. "Was I ever enough?" She said softly, "This isn't about you." That hurt more than anything. I remembered every time she told me, "I love you," and asked, "Were those lies too?" She said, "No." I laughed again. "Then why does this feel like you erased us?" She told me, "You're overreacting." I whispered, "You slept with him." I asked, "Did you think of me?" She paused and said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I answered, "But you did." My throat burned. I said, "You chose him for one night and destroyed years." She said, "It was just closure." I replied, "Closure doesn't leave your husband alone all night." I hung up before she could speak again. I sat on the bed and said, "This can't be real." I looked at our wedding photo and asked it, was I blind? My phone buzzed again. "Can we talk when I get home?" I replied, "We already did." I felt sick. I felt small. I said out loud, "She chose him." The words felt heavy. I pressed my phone to my chest and whispered, "Everything we built just collapsed." For the first time, I didn't miss her. I missed the version of us that no longer existed, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. She finally came home that evening. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the door, and when I heard the lock click, I said, "You're late." She looked at me, tired, and said, "I know. I'm sorry." I laughed bitterly. Sorry doesn't fix this. She sank onto the armchair and whispered, "Can we talk?" I said, "Talk? About what? How you spent the night with him?" Her eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," she said. I shook my head. "It happened. That's enough." She tried to reach for my hand. I pulled it back. "Don't touch me. I didn't want to hurt you," she said, voice trembling. I stood up and said, "Do you even know what you've done?" She swallowed hard and whispered, "I'm lost." I said sharply, "You think I'm not." We sat in silence for a while. I kept checking the clock, counting every second she had been gone from me. "Why him?" I asked finally. She looked down. "I don't know. I needed to understand myself." I laughed hollowly. "And you thought that meant leaving me?" I just," she said, stopping. I said, "No, don't, just don't." She bit her lip and didn't say anything. I told her, "Everything feels wrong now, even our house." She whispered, "I never stopped loving you." I said, "Then why leave me alone all night?" Her friend called on the speakerphone suddenly. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked. I said nothing, staring at her, and she added, "You need to calm down." I snapped, "Calm down, you don't even know the half of it." She hung up. My wife's eyes widened. I wanted to explain. I said, "You already explained enough, with your actions." I went into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone was in my hand. I whispered to myself, "I can't do this anymore." I heard her footsteps behind me. "Please," she said softly. I didn't answer. She knelt down and asked, "Will you forgive me?" I stayed silent. The silence stretched on. I realized I didn't have the words. I just had pain. I whispered, "I don't even know who you are right now." She stayed there, quiet, waiting. I finally said, "I need to be alone." She nodded slowly and went to the living room. I sat there in the dark, staring at the phone in my hand, thinking about every laugh, every kiss, every promise, and feeling that with one night, everything had shifted. The house was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel safe. It felt empty. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her words, her silence, that night. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through our old messages, looking for something, anything that would make sense of what she did. I called my neighbor, Mark, the next morning. "Hey, did you see Sarah last night?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He hesitated. Yeah, she came over around 10, said she had to talk." I felt my stomach drop. "Talk? With who?" Mark said slowly, "I think with Jake. You know, her ex." I slammed the phone down. I whispered, "Of course. That makes perfect sense." I couldn't believe it. I was blind. I said aloud. Later, I ran into her coworker, Lisa. "I just wanted to check on you," she said. "How are you holding up?" I laughed bitterly. Holding up? How do you hold up when the person you trusted most chooses someone else? She frowned. "I heard about last night. Are you okay?" "Okay," I said, voice shaking. "No, I'm not. I trusted her. I believed in us." And she threw it away. Lisa said softly, "Sometimes people make mistakes. Maybe she didn't mean to hurt you." I shook my head. Mistakes. Staying the night with your ex isn't a mistake. It's betrayal. I went home and found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and said, "I didn't expect you to know." I asked, "Know what?" "That I stayed with him," she admitted. I didn't want you to find out like this." I laughed, bitter and low. "Find out like this?" I was awake all night imagining what you were doing. All night thinking I was losing everything. She said, "I know. I'm sorry. I thought I could handle closure without hurting you." I leaned back and said, "You didn't just hurt me, you broke me." She looked down. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad." "Too late," I said. "Everything feels wrong now. I can't even trust the sound of your voice." She whispered, "I still love you." I shook my head. Love isn't enough when the foundation is gone. You've rewritten the rules without telling me. I left the room and sat in the dark, phone in hand, trying to make sense of it all. I whispered, "How could you?" Over and over, not expecting an answer. The truth had surfaced, but it didn't bring relief. Just more questions, more pain. And I realized that nothing would ever feel the same again. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where she had been. My hands were shaking, and I whispered, "What do I even do now?" She walked in quietly. "Can we talk?" she asked. I said, "Talk? About what? How you spent the night with him, or how you lied to me for weeks?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't lie. I didn't plan it." I laughed bitterly. "Planning doesn't matter. You made your choice." Her eyes filled with tears. "I love you. I still do." I clenched my fists. "Love? Do you even know what that means? You broke me. You destroyed us. And now you're telling me you love me." She whispered, "I'm sorry. Please, let me explain." I shook my head. "No, I don't want explanations. I need to decide what I want." She stepped closer. "I can fix this. I'll do anything." I looked at her and said quietly, "You can't fix trust once it's gone." She paused. "Then what? You'll just leave?" I nodded slowly. "Maybe, or maybe I fight for myself, not for us. I need to stop being the man who waits for someone who doesn't return." She looked shocked. "You're saying you don't forgive me?" I said, "I can forgive, but I won't forget. And forgetting is what I need to survive." She sat down and whispered, "So this is it?" I nodded. "I'm choosing me. I'm choosing my own peace. I can't keep being hurt while pretending everything is fine." She cried softly. "I never meant to destroy you." I said, "Intentions don't erase consequences. You made your choice. Now I have to make mine." I went to the bedroom and packed a small bag. Just the essentials. She asked, "Where are you going?" I said, "Out, away, to think, to heal. I don't know yet if I'll come back, but I know I can't stay like this." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Please don't follow. This is my path, not yours." I walked out into the cold night air, phone in my pocket, heart heavy, mind racing. I whispered, "I'll survive this. I have to." For the first time since that night, I felt something shift inside me. A spark of control. I realized that for the first time in years, the choice was mine. I could let this betrayal destroy me, or I could rise above it. And I swore to myself, right there on the empty street, that I would not let her actions define who I became. Weeks passed. I stayed busy, long hours at work, late, night runs, anything to keep my mind from going back to her. I whispered to myself, "I won't let this destroy me." Then I started hearing things, small rumors, mutual friends mentioning her name, her ex's name. "Did you hear Sarah and Jake broke up?" Someone asked at work. I paused and said, "Really? Already?" My voice was calm, though inside I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. A friend, Tom, pulled me aside. "She's trying to reach out. Calls, texts, everything." I laughed softly. Why would I care? Tom frowned. You might though. Old feelings, you know. I shook my head. I've changed. I can't go back to someone who hurt me like that. One night, my phone buzzed. Her message read, I need to see you. I messed up. Please. I stared at it and whispered, please, after everything. I didn't reply. The next day, I ran into her at the grocery store. She smiled weakly. Hi, she said. I nodded. Hi. She tried again. Can we talk? I said calmly, talk won't change what happened. You made your choice. Her eyes welled up. I didn't mean to hurt you like that. I thought I was just finding closure. I said, closure doesn't cost someone else years of trust. You're learning that now, aren't you? She looked down, ashamed. Yes, I realize it. I whispered to myself, and that's enough. I wasn't gloating. I didn't want her to feel humiliated. I only wanted the scales of life to tip back toward balance. I kept focusing on myself. Gym, friends, hobbies I'd abandoned. I laughed without thinking of her. I noticed the calm in my chest. The anger was fading, replaced by something stronger, control. One evening, she called. I ignored it. Later, I heard through a friend that Jake left her, and her world was unraveling slowly. She reached out to everyone, but doors were closing. I whispered, karma doesn't need my hand. It was strange, watching her life falter while mine rebuilt itself. I didn't feel joy exactly, just relief. Relief that I was no longer the person lying awake, heartbroken, waiting for someone who wouldn't come home. I realized then, sitting on my balcony with the wind on my face, that I was free. Free from her lies, free from her betrayal. And for the first time in months, I whispered to the night, I am alive, and I am in control. I saw her life unravel, and I couldn't stop thinking, this is what choices do. I ran into a mutual friend, Jen, at a cafe. She leaned in and whispered, Sarah's been fired. Jake left. She's not doing well. I said quietly, I heard. My chest tightened, but I didn't feel glee. Just a strange emptiness. Later, I got a text from her. Can we meet? I need to explain. I stared at it and muttered, explain. What could you possibly say now? I didn't reply. A few days later, I saw her at the park, sitting alone on a bench, looking smaller than I remembered. I whispered to myself, she's falling apart, and I didn't break her. She did this herself. She looked up when she noticed me. Hey, her voice was weak, almost desperate. I said calmly, hey, I lost everything, she admitted. Jake, my job people are turning away. I nodded slowly. It's the consequences of your choices. I can't fix this for you. Her lips trembled. I didn't know it would get this bad. I wish I could take it back. I looked at her, my chest heavy but steady. You can't take it back. Actions have weight. She said softly, I just wanted a second chance to make things right with you. I shook my head. It's too late for us. I forgive you, maybe, but forgetting, no, that's gone. Her eyes filled with tears. Do you hate me? I paused. No, I don't hate you, but I also don't pity you. You chose your path. I can only watch and move forward. I turned and started walking away. She called after me, please don't leave me like this. I didn't stop. I whispered to myself, I'm leaving the past behind. Later that night, I sat alone, thinking of how fragile people are when they betray trust. I wasn't celebrating her downfall. I just understood that life had a way of balancing itself. She'd made her choices. I'd made mine. For the first time since that night, I felt calm. I wasn't joyful, but I wasn't shattered either. I whispered, I survived. She's learning the hard way. But I don't have to live in it. I turned off my phone, leaned back in my chair, and finally let myself breathe. She called again that evening. I didn't answer. My phone buzzed, and I stared at it heart tight. Finally, I sighed and picked up. "Please, can we talk?" Her voice was small, almost fragile. I said, "This is the last time, Sarah, one last conversation." There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, I've lost everything. I hurt you. I'm so sorry." I took a deep breath. "I know. I've watched it all unfold. You're learning the consequences of your choices, but I didn't cause your fall. You did." Her voice cracked. "I never wanted to destroy us. I never thought it would go this far." I said quietly, "Your intentions don't erase what happened. Do you understand that?" "Yes," she whispered. "I do. I wish I could take it back. I'd give anything to make it right with you." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "It's too late. You can't undo what you did, and I can't go back to the life I had before that night." "I still love you," she said, voice trembling. I sighed, my chest heavy. "I know, but love isn't enough when trust is gone. I forgive you, maybe, but I can't forget, and forgetting is what I need to survive." She sniffled. "So this is goodbye." I said firmly, "Yes, goodbye, Sarah. I wish you find yourself, but I am no longer a part of your path." Her sobs came quietly over the line. I understand. I'll never forget you." I whispered softly, "Nor will I forget myself. That's what matters now." I hung up, phone in hand, heart aching but steady. I sat back and looked at the framed photo of us on the shelf. I whispered, "We're gone, but I'm still here. I'm still me." I let the tears fall, but this time they weren't for her. They were for me. My broken pieces, my lost trust, my survival. I whispered again, "I've lost her, but I've found myself." For the first time in months, I felt light. I didn't feel whole yet, but I felt free, and that was enough. Months passed. I woke up one morning and realized I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. I whispered to myself, "I survived. I'm alive. I'm free." I went for a run through the quiet streets, the cold wind hitting my face, and said, "This is mine. Every step, every breath, mine." I smiled faintly, a small victory. At work, my colleagues noticed a change. Tom said, "You seem different. Lighter, maybe." I laughed softly. I finally stopped waiting for someone who wasn't coming home. I started seeing friends more, laughing without guilt, without thinking of her. I whispered to myself, "I can be happy without her." One evening, I ran into Lisa, the coworker who had tried to console me early on. She asked, "How are you really?" I said calmly, "Better than I have been in months. I've learned that life keeps going, with or without the people we thought we needed." She nodded. "You sound strong." I smiled. I had to be. Losing her taught me that strength isn't about revenge. It's about surviving, forgiving myself, and moving on. At home, I rearranged my apartment, threw out reminders of the past, and whispered, "You're gone, but I'm still here." I felt lighter with every box I removed. One night, I sat on my balcony, looking at the stars. I whispered to the sky, "I found myself in the ruins. I rebuilt me, and that is worth more than anything I lost." No anger, no regrets, just quiet, steady peace. I knew I would carry scars, but they were mine, not hers. They reminded me of what I endured and what I overcame. I picked up my phone and smiled faintly. No messages. No calls. I whispered, "I don't need them. I only need me." The night air was cold, but it felt like freedom. I whispered again, softly, almost to myself, "I am whole again. I am alive. I am me." And for the first time in a long time, I slept without fear, without longing, without pain. I had lost her, yes. But in losing her, I had found myself.